I found my pregnant daughter dying alone in the ICU while my son-in-law partied in Hawaii. When he called screaming about his frozen accounts, I said, "You left my daughter to die while you bought jewelry for your mistress with her money." Then I revealed his real punishment. Let me explain how I got here and why David Ashford picked the wrong family to betray. My name is Amelia Barry. I'm 59 years old, and I built a $15 million consulting empire from nothing. This is how I turned their own game against them. I didn't build my fortune by accepting disrespect. My late husband Richard left Isabella and me very well protected. She has access to $400,000 in liquid funds now, with her full $8.2 million trust unlocking at 35. What David didn't know was that I also maintain a $2.3 million emergency fund, specifically for family protection situations. The flight from Paris landed at JFK on Tuesday evening, October 15th. I'd been in Europe for 3 months, healing after 2 years of grief. I decided to surprise Isabella instead of going straight home to my Manhattan penthouse. That decision saved my daughter's life. When my driver James pulled into Isabella's driveway in Westchester at p.m., something felt wrong immediately. The $850,000 house I'd helped them buy was completely dark. Newspapers scattered across the walkway. The lawn overgrown. Isabella never let appearances slip. I taught her better than that. I called her phone, straight to voicemail with her cheerful voice from months ago. "Hi, you've reached Isabella. Leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can." "James, drive to the hospital now," I told my driver. We tried Northern Westchester Hospital first, then White Plains. At the third hospital, Presbyterian Lawrence, the receptionist's face changed when I mentioned Isabella's name. "Are you immediate family?" "I'm her mother." Dr. Martinez appeared 15 minutes later. "Mrs. Barry, your daughter is in our ICU." The words hit like a physical blow. "What happened?" "She was brought in 3 days ago by a neighbor who found her unconscious in her front yard. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, and stress-induced complications. At 8 months pregnant, her condition was critical. 3 days. My daughter had been fighting for her life for 3 days while I sipped champagne in Montmartre." "Where is her husband?" Dr. Martinez's expression mixed pity with disgust. "We've been unable to reach Mr. Ashford. His phone appears disconnected or out of service range. His business partner said he's been unreachable for over a week on some extended business trip." I sat beside Isabella's hospital bed at p.m. and took her cold hand. She looked so small, dwarfed by machines and monitors. Her belly, round and prominent, held my grandchild, who was also fighting for survival. That night at midnight, I called Richard Blackwood, Manhattan's most ruthless attorney and my legal counsel for over 15 years. "Richard, I need everything about David Ashford's financial life examined by morning. Bank accounts, credit cards, business holdings, personal assets, all of it." "Considered it done, Amelia." When Isabella briefly woke at 2 a.m. and whispered, "David, he left," I smoothed her hair back. "Don't worry about David. Mom's going to take care of everything." David Ashford had made the biggest mistake of his life. He was about to discover that some mistakes come with a price tag even his arrogance couldn't afford. Richard arrived at 7 a.m. sharp on Wednesday morning, with coffee, and the grim expression that made him Manhattan's most feared attorney. I'd spent the night reading financial documents on my tablet while Isabella slept, cross-referencing bank statements with credit card records. "David's tech startup filed for bankruptcy protection 6 months ago," I said, showing him my research. "He never told Isabella. The house has a second mortgage taken out 8 weeks ago for $200,000. Her savings account was cleaned out gradually over the past 4 months. $387,000 total." Richard's eyebrows rose as I showed him David's credit card activity. Hawaiian resort charges, yacht rentals, expensive restaurants, jewelry stores. He's been living it up in Maui while his pregnant wife was literally dying. Then I showed him the Instagram evidence I'd found at 4 a.m. after hours of careful searching. Screenshots from Tiffany Luxe Life, a blonde influencer posing on a luxury yacht, champagne glass raised to the sunset, David's distinctive Rolex visible as his arm wrapped around her waist. Tiffany Martinez, age 25, Instagram influencer, I explained. According to her posts, she's been in Hawaii for 2 weeks, documenting her romantic getaway with her amazing boyfriend who's been spoiling her rotten. Look at the timestamps. She posted this yacht photo on Monday at 3 p.m. Hawaii time. That's the same day Isabella collapsed. Richard opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. David Ashford's financial picture is worse than you suspected. Personal debt close to $2 million. Business debt another $4 million. He's been shuffling money between accounts for months, probably trying to stay ahead of creditors. What's his access to Isabella's money? She has joint accounts totaling $400,000, shared credit cards with a $150,000 limit, and a credit line secured against her trust for another $250,000. He's been systematically draining her accessible funds to finance his affair and failing business. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Richard, I want every account frozen today. Amelia, that's complicated. I don't care if it requires emergency court orders. My daughter is lying in an ICU bed, and that man is spending her money on champagne and prostitutes. Richard pulled out his phone and began making calls to judges he'd worked with for decades. While he worked his legal magic, I returned to Isabella's bedside. She was awake, staring out the window at the gray October morning. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Tired, confused. The nurses keep asking about David, and I don't know what to tell them." Isabella's story emerged slowly over the next hour. David had been distant for months, claiming work stress, taking calls at odd hours, disappearing for client meetings that lasted all day. Their joint credit card bills had grown enormous, but when Isabella questioned the charges, David became defensive and angry. He said I was being paranoid, that pregnancy hormones were making me suspicious of normal business expenses. He showed me contracts and proposals, said everything would be fine once the big deal closed. What big deal? Some tech company in California wanted to buy his software platform. He said it was worth millions, that we'd never have to worry about money again. There was no big deal. There never had been. David had been feeding her lies while systematically destroying their financial future. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard at AM. "It's done. All accounts frozen as of 30 minutes ago. His credit cards will start declining within the hour." I smiled grimly and typed back, "Excellent. Now, the real fun begins." At exactly PM Hawaii time, PM New York time, David's perfect paradise began to crumble. Richard had arranged real-time monitoring of David's account activity through our private investigator contacts. PM Hawaii, credit card declined. Kona Village Resort Spa Services, $850. PM Hawaii, credit card declined. Maui Ocean Center Marine Adventures, $1,200. PM Hawaii, credit card declined. Helicopter tour booking, $2,500. I imagined David fumbling for different cards, embarrassment spreading across his face as each one declined. Tiffany watching with growing confusion as her sugar daddy suddenly couldn't maintain their lavish lifestyle. My phone rang at exactly PM Hawaii time. I recognized the 808 area code immediately. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Amelia Barry." "What the hell did you do?" David's voice was raw with panic. I could hear tropical music and tourist chatter in the background. He was probably calling from the resort lobby after being humiliated at the front desk. "I'm sorry. Could you be more specific? I've done quite a few things today." "My cards, Amelia. Every single one declined, frozen. I can't even pay for gas to get back to the hotel." "How terrible for you. I imagine it's quite embarrassing to be stranded without funds, especially when you're not alone." Silence. I could practically hear his mind racing, trying to figure out how much I knew. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know you abandoned my daughter while she was carrying your child. I know she's been lying unconscious in intensive care for 3 days while you've been drinking champagne on yacht decks. I know you've stolen nearly $400,000 from her accounts to fund your midlife crisis vacation with a woman half your age." Longer silence. When David spoke again, his voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You have no right to interfere in our marriage. I have every right to protect my daughter and grandchild from a man who would leave them to die while he plays house with an Instagram influencer. Isabella is fine. She's just being dramatic." "Isabella is in the ICU, David. Machines are keeping track of her heartbeat and our grandchild's vital signs. The doctors said if she hadn't been found when she was, both she and the baby would have died. Another pause. This one carried different weight. Not just shock, but terrible realization. That's not. She can't be. I talked to her just last week. You talked to her last week. Then you disappeared to Hawaii with your mistress while she collapsed from dehydration and stress-induced complications. The neighbor found her unconscious in the front yard on Sunday morning. Your pregnant wife was dying alone while you were posting vacation photos on social media. I need to come home. I need to book a flight right now. With what money? I've frozen every account connected to Isabella's finances. Your credit cards, your bank accounts, even your business credit lines. You wanted to play games with my daughter's life. Now you get to play them without her money. You can't do this? It's illegal. Actually, it's completely legal. Isabella is incapacitated due to a medical emergency, which gives me power of attorney over her financial affairs as her next of kin. Richard Blackwood filed the emergency paperwork this morning. Every judge in New York knows my name, David. Amelia, please. I made mistakes, but I can fix this. I love Isabella. You love Isabella's money. You love the lifestyle her trust fund provided. But you don't love Isabella herself, because if you did, you never could have left her alone and vulnerable while you had your affair in Hawaii. I'm flying home tonight. I'll make this right. No, you won't, because you don't understand what you're really dealing with. I looked through the hospital room window at Isabella, sleeping peacefully, her hand resting protectively over her belly. I mean that you've committed the unforgivable sin, David. You hurt my family. And when someone hurts my family, I don't just get angry. I get systematic. The account freeze is just the beginning. By tomorrow morning, everyone in our social circle will know exactly what kind of man you are. Your business partners will know about the fraud and abandoned pregnant wife. Everyone will know you stole from my daughter to pay for your Hawaiian vacation. You wouldn't. I've already started. Patricia Williams from Social Scene magazine is running the story in tomorrow's edition. Full spread, complete with photographs of you and Miss Martinez, courtesy of her very public Instagram account. David made a sound somewhere between a growl and a whimper. But that's not even the best part. Richard is filing papers tomorrow to have you declared legally incompetent to manage family finances due to your demonstrated pattern of fraud and abandonment. We're seeking full control of any assets connected to Isabella or the baby, retroactively. That's impossible. Is it? You've been systematically draining her accounts while she was medically vulnerable. You disappeared without contact information during a medical emergency. You've been documented engaging in adultery while using her money to finance the affair. I think any reasonable judge would conclude you pose a clear and present danger to my daughter's financial well-being. I could hear Tiffany's voice in the background, shrill and demanding. David, what's taking so long? The helicopter is leaving in 10 minutes. Your girlfriend sounds impatient. I hope she's understanding when you explain that the party's over. Amelia, please. I know I screwed up, but you can't destroy my entire life over this. I'm not destroying your life, David. You did that yourself the moment you decided my daughter's suffering was less important than your pleasure. I'm simply making sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. I'll sue you. I'll take this to court and prove you're acting out of spite. I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. You'll sue me with what money, what lawyer, what reputation? By tomorrow, you'll be lucky if you can afford a bus ticket home from Hawaii. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to figure out how to get yourself home to face the consequences of your actions. You're going to grovel for forgiveness that will never come. And you're going to learn what it means to cross a woman who built an empire from nothing and has absolutely no qualms about protecting what she loves. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. The next morning, Thursday, October 17th, brought devastating news for David. Patricia Williams had outdone herself with a 6-page spread in Social Scene magazine, Tech Entrepreneur's Hawaiian Nightmare, How David Ashford Abandoned His Dying Pregnant Wife for an Instagram Influencer. The photographs were brutal and impossible to deny. David on the yacht deck with champagne raised in celebration, while a sidebar showed Isabella's hospital bracelet dated the same day. David and Tiffany feeding each other expensive sushi at Mama's Fish House, while another sidebar displayed the medical bills from Isabella's emergency treatment totaling $47,000. David's Rolex-adorned wrist wrapped around Tiffany's waist, with a small insert showing the credit card statements that proved he'd used Isabella's money to buy the $8,000 watch. My phone had been ringing since 6 a.m. with calls from friends, business associates, and reporters who'd seen the story. I let most go to voicemail, but when Victoria Ashford called, one of my oldest friends whose opinion carried weight in our social circles, I answered immediately. "Amelia, darling, I just saw the magazine. I'm absolutely horrified. How is Isabella?" "She's healing. Both she and the baby are going to be fine." "And that dreadful man. I cannot believe anyone could be so callous." "David is learning that actions have consequences." "Good. You know, I never liked him. There was always something calculating about him. Too charming, too quick with compliments. Men like that are usually hiding something." This was exactly the social validation I'd been counting on. David had fooled Isabella, but the women who moved in our circles had decades of experience identifying predators who targeted wealthy families. My assistant Margaret called at 10 a.m. with updates. "It's trending on social media. Tiffany Martinez has locked down all her accounts after getting flooded with angry comments calling her a homewrecker. David's business website crashed from traffic. People are posting screenshots of the magazine article in the comment sections." What about David himself? His flight landed at LAX 2 hours ago. He took an Uber to his apartment in Manhattan. Apparently, he managed to borrow money from someone for a one-way ticket. He called Richard's office at AM screaming about defamation and invasion of privacy. And Richard's response? He reminded David that everything in the article is documented fact, based on public records and social media posts. Hard to claim defamation when you posted the evidence yourself. The most satisfying development came at noon when Richard called. David just fired his divorce attorney. Why? Apparently, the lawyer read the magazine article and realized David has no assets to pay legal fees with. He withdrew from the case this morning, citing irreconcilable differences regarding client expectations and financial reality. So David is representing himself? For now, though I suspect that won't last long once he realizes how complex Isabella's financial situation actually is. Richard had been reviewing my late husband's estate planning documents. The trust structure Richard created is significantly more sophisticated than David understands. Isabella's inheritance isn't just about money. It includes voting rights in several companies, property holdings, and intellectual property rights David never even knew existed. How much are we talking about? Conservative estimate, Isabella's total inheritance when she turns 35 will be worth approximately $12 million. The trust David thought he was accessing represents less than 5% of her actual net worth. I felt a moment of pure satisfaction. David had destroyed his marriage and committed federal crimes for access to pocket change compared to Isabella's real inheritance. On Friday, October 18th, Richard called with the final devastating blow. "I've been digging into David's business dealings. The fraud accusations are worse than we initially thought. He's been running a Ponzi scheme disguised as a tech startup, using new investor money to pay earlier investors while skimming funds for personal use." How much money? Conservative estimate, he's defrauded investors out of nearly $6 million over the past 2 years. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is already investigating. They just haven't made it public yet. Isabella and I exchanged glances when Richard delivered this news over speakerphone in her hospital room. David wasn't just an unfaithful husband. He was a federal criminal. 3 of his investors have already filed civil suits. When they discover his personal assets have been frozen due to abandonment and fraud allegations, they'll petition the court for immediate seizure of anything he owns. David's business partner, Marcus Webb, called that afternoon, desperate to distance himself from the impending federal investigation. We met in Richard's office on Saturday morning, where Marcus provided everything we needed to avoid prosecution himself. David told me his wife was supporting the business temporarily, Marcus said, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the air conditioning. He said she believed in the vision and wanted to invest in their future. "Did you ever meet my daughter?" "A few times at company parties. She seemed tired, distracted. David said pregnancy was making her emotional and irrational. Another layer of manipulation. David had been poisoning his business partner's perception of Isabella to prevent questions about why she seemed increasingly withdrawn. Marcus provided complete financial records, bank statements, investor communications, business contracts, email threads, everything we needed to recover Isabella's stolen money and expose David's criminal enterprise. He has a safety deposit box at First National Bank on East 57th Street, and a storage unit in Queens where he keeps business equipment. Oh, and his aunt in Portland has been receiving packages for him over the past few months. Expensive electronics, jewelry, things like that. David had been preparing for his eventual disappearance, squirreling away valuable items he could liquidate when his scheme collapsed. Within 48 hours, we had emergency court orders to seize everything David owned or controlled. The safety deposit box contained $47,000 in cash and jewelry worth approximately $23,000, all purchased with Isabella's money according to the credit card records. The storage unit held electronics and luxury items totaling another $31,000 in value. 2 weeks later, on November 3rd, Isabella delivered a healthy 7-pound, 2-ounce daughter we named Victoria Grace Berry. The birth went smoothly with no complications. Both mother and daughter were in excellent health. That same day, I received an unexpected call. "Mrs. Berry, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the NYPD. We have David Ashford in custody, and he's asking to speak with you." David had been found at 2 a.m. trying to climb the fire escape to Isabella's hospital window. He'd been living in his car for weeks, stalking my daughter's movements despite the restraining order we'd obtained. "What are the charges?" "Violation of the restraining order, harassment, and attempted breaking and entering. He was found trying to climb the fire escape to your daughter's window. Hospital security detained him before he reached her floor." "Is Isabella safe?" "She's fine. But, Mrs. Berry, I think you should know he's been living rough for the past few weeks, sleeping in his car, apparently following your daughter's movements. The hospital staff says he's been seen in the parking lot multiple times. At the police station, I observed David through one-way glass before deciding whether to speak with him. What I saw was devastating in its completeness. The confident man who'd married my daughter 3 years ago was gone, replaced by someone hollowed out from the inside. David sat hunched over the metal table, unwashed hair hanging in his eyes, clothes clearly slept in multiple times. His hands shook with what looked like caffeine withdrawal, or something worse, and his eyes carried the wild look of someone who'd lost touch with reality. How long has he been like this? The deterioration accelerated after he lost his apartment last month. He'd been staying in budget motels, then his car, then various shelters. The downtown mission staff says he talks constantly about getting his family back, about explaining himself to people who won't listen. I decided to talk to him with Detective Chen present. "Amelia," David breathed when I entered the interview room. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. There's so much I need to explain." I took the chair across from him, noting the sour smell of unwashed clothes and the way his hands trembled as he tried to smooth down his hair. "Hello, David. You look wonderful, elegant as always. How is Isabella? How is the baby?" "They're both healthy and safe, no thanks to you. I know you think I'm a monster, but you have to understand. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was in over my head with the business, desperate to find a way to make it work. When Tiffany came along, she seemed like a solution to the stress, not a replacement for my family." Even in his diminished state, David was still trying to control the narrative, positioning himself as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of his own destruction. "David, you attempted to break into Isabella's hospital room. You've been stalking her for weeks. Do you understand how that behavior appears to people?" "I wasn't stalking her. I was trying to find the right moment to apologize, to explain what really happened. But you've turned everyone against me, the hospital staff, the lawyers, even my own business partners." "I haven't turned anyone against you. Your actions did that." "My actions?" David's voice rose, and Detective Chen shifted slightly in her chair. "My actions were trying to save a failing business and protect my family from financial ruin. Everything I did was for Isabella and the baby." The delusion was complete. David had rewritten history in his mind, transforming theft and abandonment into noble sacrifice. He genuinely seemed to believe that his affair and financial crimes had been motivated by love rather than selfishness. "David, you stole $400,000 from Isabella's accounts to fund your Hawaiian vacation with another woman. How was that protecting your family?" I was buying time. The investor meeting in Hawaii was real. I was trying to secure funding that would have saved everything. Tiffany she was helping me network, introducing me to people who might be interested in the business. Tiffany was a 25-year-old Instagram influencer with no business connections. You don't understand the modern investment landscape. Social media presence matters. Having an attractive woman vouching for your success opens doors. Stop. I held up my hand, feeling simultaneously disgusted and exhausted by his refusal to accept reality. David, there was no investor meeting. There was no business salvation. You went to Hawaii to have an affair, and you used Isabella's money to pay for it. Everything else is a story you've told yourself to avoid confronting what you actually did. David stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something break behind his eyes. For just an instant, the delusion cracked, and he seemed to see himself clearly. She almost died, he whispered. Isabella almost died, and I wasn't there. Yes. The baby could have died too. Yes. Because I chose to be with another woman instead of taking care of my pregnant wife. Yes. The clarity lasted perhaps 30 seconds before his face hardened again, self-protective mechanisms slamming back into place. But that's not the whole story, he said desperately. There were extenuating circumstances, business pressures that you can't understand. I was trying to build something that would provide for my family's future. David, stop talking. Something in my voice cut through his rambling. He looked at me with the same expression he'd worn during our phone call from Hawaii, the recognition that he was facing someone who couldn't be manipulated or convinced. I want you to listen very carefully, I continued. Isabella gave birth to your daughter yesterday. That little girl will grow up happy, healthy, and loved. She'll attend the best schools, travel the world, and have every opportunity life can offer. That's wonderful. I want to be part of that. I want to help raise her. She will never know your name. She will never see your face. She will never wonder about the man who provided half her DNA, because she'll understand that biology doesn't make someone a father. David's face crumpled. You can't erase me from her life completely. I don't have to erase you, David. You erased yourself when you chose selfishness over sacrifice, pleasure over responsibility, lies over truth. But I'm her father. No, you're her sperm donor. Fathers don't abandon pregnant mothers. Fathers don't steal from their families. Fathers don't prioritize affairs over emergencies. I stood up, smoothing my coat and gathering my purse. Detective Chen tells me you're trying to bargain information for reduced charges. I have names, account numbers, details about offshore funds. Save your breath. The FBI has everything they need to prosecute you and recover the stolen money. Your cooperation isn't worth anything because you're not important enough to be useful as a witness. Then what happens to me? I paused at the door, looking back at the broken man who had once seemed so confident and charming. You serve your time, you pay what you owe, and you spend the rest of your life living with the knowledge that you had everything. A beautiful wife, a healthy child on the way, financial security, social respect, and you threw it all away for a few weeks of meaningless pleasure. Amelia, please. Goodbye, David. I hope you find some peace with your choices, because no one else is going to give it to you. 6 months later, on May 15th, David was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for investment fraud. The judge also ordered $2.3 million in restitution to defrauded investors. By the time he's released, Victoria will be old enough to attend school. She'll grow up with no memory of his existence, no curiosity about his absence, no sense that anything is missing from her life. The final financial tally was comprehensive. We recovered $387,000 of Isabella's stolen money through asset seizures and court orders. David's federal conviction resulted in $2.3 million in restitution orders to defrauded investors. His professional reputation was completely destroyed. He'll never work in tech again. The civil suits from investors will ensure he remains financially devastated for decades. Isabella established the Isabella Berry Foundation for women's financial independence using her recovered funds and a $500,000 donation from my emergency fund. The foundation now serves over 200 women annually with legal assistance, financial education, and emergency support for those escaping financially abusive relationships. Victoria Grace Berry is now 5 years old, fierce and intelligent, with her mother's thoughtful nature and the unmistakable Berry family steel that shows itself whenever someone tries to tell her what she can't do. She calls the women helped by Isabella's foundation Butterfly Ladies, women learning to fly free. David wanted to be a father without accepting the responsibilities of fatherhood. Instead, he became a cautionary tale about the price of selfishness. Some mistakes can be forgiven, some betrayals can be overcome, but abandoning a pregnant woman to die while stealing her money to finance an affair, that destroys lives permanently. The war was over, and we had won completely. Victoria will grow up knowing she comes from a line of women who protected what mattered most, who understood that true security comes from their own strength, and who never accepted less than they deserved. That's how I learned that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to reveal who they really are. David showed us exactly who he was when he thought we were powerless to respond. But he also showed Isabella and me who we were when everything we loved was threatened. We were magnificent.